This program has been made possible in part by the Foundation for Jewish Philanthropies and by the members of WNED. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Ann Lauricella. Welcome to a conversation with Gerda Weissmann Klein, a woman I've had the honor of knowing as a friend for more than 40 years. She is an inspiration, not only to me, but to everyone with whom she's come in contact. Her story is both tragic and joyful, a stark illustration of prejudice and dehumanization, but ultimately a story about the triumph of the human spirit. Gerda's lifelong journey exemplifies tolerance, respect, community service, and the responsibilities of citizenship. That journey began in Poland when she was 15 years old.
In the winter of 1945, Gerda Weissmann Klein had lost everything. Family, friends, home, possessions. In her words, the Nazis were like a tsunami that swept her world away. When they invaded Poland in 1939, they took it all, except her life. That was the one thing they didn't get. Gerda lived 6 years under German rule. From the time she was 15, she endured life in increasing degrees of degradation. First in the basement of her house, with no water or electricity, then in the Jewish ghetto, and finally 3 years in slave labor camps. But the worst was still to come. In January of 1945, as the war was drawing to a close, she and nearly 2,000 other girls began a grueling 350-mile death march to Czechoslovakia. It was, as Gerda said, the first step to the end of the road, either liberation or doom. More than 1,800 girls died on the march. On May 6, 1945, approximately 120 survivors, dumped in a vacant factory, were liberated. Gerda was among them. American officer Kurt Klein was the first person Gerda met on the day of her liberation. Just 1 day shy of her 21st birthday, she weighed 68 pounds, her hair was white, and she hadn't had a bath in 3 years. But that didn't matter. Kurt Klein was a German Jew who had immigrated to the United States to escape persecution. His parents had remained and died in Auschwitz. Gerda took him to see the other survivors. He held the door open for her, letting her enter the factory. That gesture, Gerda said, restored me to humanity. For Gerda, he'd opened the door to her future. They married in Paris following the war and soon after settled in Kurt's hometown of Buffalo, New York, where they lived for 50 years before moving to Arizona. Gerda Weissmann Klein has written several books, including All But My Life, a classic in Holocaust literature. She's also actively involved in promoting citizenship and visits schools around the country sharing her story of hope, courage, and respect.
Gerda, welcome to Buffalo. It's so nice to see you. Those years were horrific, Gerda. What kept you going?
Well, I think this is this human spirit, which I think we all have, the desire to live and the hope. And I believe that this is not unique. It lives in everyone when confronted with the type of arts that we have been confronted with.
You came to Buffalo. We're so happy that you did. And shortly after you arrived in Buffalo, you wrote a book about your experience, All But My Life, and it's now in its 62nd printing. Why did you write that book, and how has that changed your life?
Well, to begin with, coming to Buffalo, and each time when I come back to Buffalo, I'm coming home. Buffalo has been my home. This is where sorrow changed into joy, when the horror of loss became gain again, when our children were born, and of course it was the home for my beloved husband, Kurt. And I was reflecting this morning, it is now, I came to Buffalo on September 13th, 1946. And I feel truly blessed when I come home again. And I want to thank you and all who made this special homecoming possible.
We're very happy that you're here. How about All But My Life? How did that change your life?
Well, All But, I think I've always been a dreamer. And I believe that I've been writing All But My Life actually when it happened. I already was looking to the future and somehow taking the present already as a past. And that was, of course, during the horrible years. But naturally, then when I had the possibility to write All But My Life, I needed to write it, and I think it has really changed my life in so many ways because it helped me greatly. It was probably like very extensive psychoanalysis. And of course, my beloved husband made all that possible with his tolerance, his understanding, and his help.
Yes. Now, your second book was very different from the first one. It was a children's book called The Blue Rose.
The Blue Rose, yes.
How did that come about?
You know, it happened when a few days after I came to Buffalo. I remember standing on Elmwood Avenue in front of Brown Routes, which I don't believe it's there anymore. And I heard a boy say to his mother, "This lady is so stupid, she doesn't even speak English." And I thought, oh my goodness, you know, not to have the facility to express what I was feeling. I mean, I could speak other languages. And later on, when little Jenny Innefeld was born, a child of a neighbor of mine, and Jenny was playing with my children, her older sister, the neighborhood children, in our backyard in Kenmore. It was Jenny's birthday, the 4th of July. And I saw Jenny standing there. She was just as beautiful as all the other children, but she was different. She was like a blue rose, of course. In July, the roses in Buffalo are marvelous. And I didn't have a birthday present for her, so I wrote The Blue Rose, which, of course, as you know, has been the foundation, has done a great deal here, thanks to mostly the efforts of Beverly Slikta-Kushik, who has been carrying the banner for The Blue Rose.
Very, very worthwhile cause. Now, you have your own foundation, the Gerda and Kurt Klein Foundation. And when was that established, and what is its mission?
That was established a little over 10 years ago. It is really in Pennsylvania. It came about in sort of an unusual way. And this foundation mostly takes care of the things which have been very close to my heart. To stamp out intolerance and to feed people. And we have been fortunate to be with Southern Poverty Law Center, who have done sort of an incredible thing, not only of my life, but all the things that we believe in. And I'm very pleased that it has been now in over 100,000 schools throughout the country. And it is available. It's called One Survivor Remembers. It is available without charge to any school in the country.
They've done a wonderful job with that.
They've done a great job, yes.
And I know that you've spoken to audiences around the globe, but there was one very special talk that you gave one opportunity, and that was when you spoke to the United Nations.
Yes, I would say that was a very, I have never been more awed, honored, and scared. Because that was when the United Nations, it was 2 years ago, when the United Nations for the first time in 61 years acknowledged the existence of the Holocaust. And when I was asked to address the United Nations, you can imagine, you know, it was almost impossible for me to, for a while I said I didn't want to do it. And then, of course, I guess a certain pride in having been chosen. I did it. But, and I'm so glad you asked that question, because it means a great deal to me. How does one convey in any words on behalf of all those, not just who were killed in the Holocaust, but all people who were killed in the name, which they died in the name of freedom and tolerance and so on. I mean, and who am I to talk about it? As it happened, it was 2 days off. It was on the 27th of January. And on the 29th of January was the day when I left on the death march, on that infamous death march. And all I could see in my mind's eye is that never-ending line with gray camp blankets and the Gestapo, the SS lifting their whips and say forward march. And we were a line of 2,000. And snow was falling down. And all I could see is those incredible snowflakes, so tender, so lacy, each one an identity to itself. And it was like all the thousands of girls and millions of girls that were happening all over Europe at the time, and how they were falling to the ground and disappearing. And I sort of felt, why did that snowflake landed on me? Why am I there? I am no different. So all I could do is beg, and truly I begged.
That was your message to the United
My
Nations?
message to the United Nations was I was begging, because I remember Mrs. Roosevelt holding the Charter of Human Rights, and I was begging that that edifice, which was built for that purpose, should become a sanctuary in which it would be implemented, that every child of every race, of every color, or any place on the globe should be able to look to the sky and dream the dreams of freedom. And I was very privileged that a number of my friends from Buffalo, including my dear friend Ruth Kahn Stovrov, was there, and I believe Beverly, you were on the West Coast at the time. Mm-hmm. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about that moment.
Thank you for representing all those people at the United Nations with your message. There was another date, another speech, April of 1999, when you and your husband were called to Columbine High School in Colorado. What could you possibly say in such a tragic situation?
Well, you know, the awe that it could happen, you know, it was done in honor of Hitler's birthday, the 21st of April, 20th and 21st. And I could not imagine that here in the beautiful mountains of Colorado, two estranged boys will be plotting for an entire year to kill their schoolmates and the teachers. I was holding the kids. As a matter of fact, I still go to Columbine. I was there just about 6-7 months ago, because it was the 10th anniversary, believe it or not. That was in January, so it's a while. And the healing has been, but the thing I could tell the kids, because, you know, they felt that they could not, that no grown-up could understand their pain, only a contemporary who has witnessed it. And of course, I was their age when I saw my friends killed in honor, quote unquote, of Hitler. And the questions were always the same. Will I ever smile again? Will I ever forget? And no, I told them they won't forget, but the memory will lodge in them, not like a heavy stone, but like a tiny flame. And whenever they come to see something horrid or unjust, that flame will rise, give them the power to go and do something about it, and warm them by the same token. So I'm still in touch with Columbine. And
I'm sure that that thought remains with them. As you and Kurt had your shared mission of promoting respect and tolerance, you had a wonderful personal family life as well. And you touch on the importance of family in your book, A Boring Evening at Home.
Yes.
How did losing your mother, your father, and your brother in the way that you did define your relationship with your 3 children, Vivian, Leslie, and Jim?
Well, I think it was all due to Kurt. He was a remarkable person. And, you know, we never were you and I. It was always we and us. And the children. And I'm, of course, miss him terribly, particularly here in Buffalo. But I'm grateful that he brought me to Buffalo to begin with. And I do not want to brag, but my children and grandchildren have really been incredible with their caring and love. And now I have a great-grandchild who is named for my beloved Kurt.
Yes, and beautiful. I've seen
You've
his picture.
So
It's
carry him
beautiful.
with me every place.
Kurt died in 2002, but there's a new play being developed that really portrays him vividly, called Gerda's Lieutenant. It's based on the collection of letters that you exchanged after the war. And this project has a star-studded creative team. Director Lee Fondakowski, award-winning documentary filmmaker Bennett Singer, writer Ellen Reeves, and veteran actor Lynn Cohen. What do you hope audiences will take away from it?
Well, above all, you know, I've always felt that I've been the focus of our family. And it's never been sufficiently illuminated what Kurt did. And I felt that in the letters, you know, which we wrote to each other, Kurt really comes alive as the great man that he was. So I have rejected all the other things. As you know, Hollywood wanted a movie and all that. But I felt that with the letters and Kurt's spirit, that Kurt will be known was number one. And two, the writing of letters, which, you know, now in our generation with the email and everything.
Texting.
Letters. And when we came upon, Kurt came upon the letters, and I said, oh my God, you know, I don't want to look at that even. That's so silly. And I started reading it, and I think it's such a wonderful thing if you pick up something that you have written more than 50 years ago, and you see your concerns and your hopes and your dreams. I think it is so important, and I would urge, particularly, I always urge young people, I talk a lot to schools and so on, write a letter to yourself. Mm-hmm. Write a letter when you're sad. You might see a couple of years later, you won't worry about it. Write when you are joyful. Write of your hopes and of your dreams. And I think letter writing, to me, is still an enormous, even though I must say I'm not a good letter writer. I pick up the phone most of the time, but I've written a lot in my life. So I feel, I hope that it is going to help not only personally, but also to illuminate the horror after the war, when it was all over and there was no place to go. Mm-hmm. I was blessed. I had found Kurt. Most of my friends had no place to go. And it was, you know, only also through the help of the Jewish community and not also the non-Jewish community in the country that people were able to go to Israel and the establishment of the state where they found, unfortunately, still not peace. But most of my friends, you know, who did not have the privilege which was given to me to come to this country, had found a home there and lost their children and grandchildren. So I found that it's important to understand the milieu and the time that was after the war in Europe.
Tell us briefly about the book that you're working on now called Raspberry.
Raspberry. Well, it is really just a very tiny book. I have done a book on autism, as you probably know, The Wings of Apple, which means the wings of hope reversed. It's about autism, which really was in a way an inspiration after the Blue Rose for a child now that has autism. And that's been out now for a little over a year. And if I may brag, I will tell you we just won a number of things on its movie. We just won it in Sydney in Australia, which is, unfortunately, you know, the need is global. Yes. With autism. The latest thing, and it's just about finished, I've been asked, there's a place called Ryan House in Phoenix, and it's going to be the only one in this country. It is something like called Helen House in England, which is a place for parents to go with children whose life expectancy is usually not more than 4 to 5 years. And those children, of course, need constant care. And so the children can go there, and I think it's about 23 days a year except, of course, in the final days, where the children can be and the parents can have a reprieve for a day or two, to take care of the other children. Because those children, for instance, need to be turned every 2 hours, day and night. So
and this book is going to benefit.
It benefits that, and it's a raspberry, and it's named for my friend Ilse, my dear friend who gave me a raspberry, her last possession. And I got it together because, her life was so short. She was 18 years old when she died, and she left a legacy which some people don't leave being 100. Yes. It's the same thing as with little Ryan Kana. He's leaving a legacy
as well. With all the achievements in your life, the books we've just talked about, your foundation work, public appearances, Oprah, 60 Minutes, honorary doctorates, it's your latest venture, Citizenship Counts, that you say you want to be your lasting legacy.
Yes.
What is Citizenship Counts?
Citizenship Counts, I saw that in Cincinnati in one school where the teacher was so imbued, having witnessed a ceremony of citizenship, that she brought it to her school, and there were 74 people from different countries being sworn in, and a judge came to school to swear them in, and the children, 800 children witnessed it. It was an incredible thing for the children and for the parents, and particularly for our children, because you know that patriotism is on a very low level. And our children must know what this country means and what people go through to become citizens. So Citizenship Counts, and I am happy to tell you we just had an incredible venue in Phoenix with Judge Sandra O'Connor. I'm working with her on it, but my granddaughter, Elissa Aumann, is national director of Citizenship Counts, which is to try to bring the citizenship ceremonies into the school system.
And you hope that will be done nationally. That's your goal, isn't it?
The goal is national, and this is very important to me because, my citizenship means so much to me. Mm-hmm. It's given me the type of opportunities which I have had to be able to be a citizen of the United States.
In 1995, an HBO film about you called One Survivor Remembers won an Academy Award. And in your acceptance speech, you said, "Since the blessed day of my liberation, I have asked the question, why am I here?" Today, at age 85, have you finally been able to answer that question?
Not really. One can never repay for what has been given to me, which has not been given to any member of my family. And most of my friends who died without holding a child in their arms, for having known love, having known freedom. I think survival is an incredible privilege. It's also a deep obligation. And I hope I have just chipped away a little on it, but it's given me more than I've given to it.
Well, everything that you've done in so many different venues throughout your life, I think that we know why you are here, and we are so grateful that you are here. Thank you so much for coming to Buffalo and being with us and sharing your thoughts with the wonderful audience we have in public broadcasting.
Thank you.
And thank you for being part of what has been a remarkable conversation with, as you see, a truly remarkable woman. I'll close with Gerda's own reflection on life. Remember the past to make a better future. Always have hope. Never give up. And be a true friend, even in hard times. Good words to live by. Thank you for joining us.
This program has been made possible in part by the Foundation for Jewish Philanthropies and by the members of WNED. Thank you.